Yesterday was one of my favorite shows in a while because I cut two checks for $50,000, one each to the families of the Canadian Forces men who were killed last month by terrorists, Corporal Nathan Cirillo and Warrant Officer Patrice Vincent. That's a result of your generosity. Thank you. You donated the $100,000 that was our goal. I've asked some friends of mine in accounting and law to help turn this project into a permanent charity for soldiers' families, and some military veteran friends of mine have agreed to sit on the charity's board. As soon as we have our Canada Revenue Agency charity number, I'll let you know. So yesterday was a big day. It was also a big day journalistically, too. The column I wrote in the Sun newspapers called "Lest Only Some of Us Forget" was the #1 most read story on the entire Toronto Sun website. And for good reason, I think. It was an investigative journalism scoop that I told you about on Monday night's TV show. A large school board that covers 75 schools in Windsor, Ontario, and neighboring towns sent a memo to all its principals to allow students to be exempted from attending Remembrance Day ceremonies. Here's what I quoted in the newspaper yesterday and on Monday's TV show. This is from that internal memo that I obtained. Quote, "Some families may be reluctant to have their children attend your location municipality's ceremonies. Please note that meaningful alternate activities should be provided at the schools for those families who do not wish their children to participate in any Remembrance Day ceremonies." What? Who could possibly object to Remembrance Day? Well, there was a hint at the bottom of that memo, links to 2 different websites about Islam, including a woman who wore a hijab when she joined the Canadian Forces. Well, this was unusual. I mean, what on earth does religion have to do with exempting students from Remembrance Day? It's not like a school Christmas concert that's expressly religious. It's a civic memorial. It's not Christian or Jewish or Muslim or anything. Before we did our TV show on Monday and before I wrote my Sun column, we checked with the school board to make sure we understood what was going on, to get their side of the story, and to confirm that the email memo was legit. Were they really setting up a policy to exempt students from Remembrance Day for religious reasons? Who on earth would do that? One of our TV producers sent this email to a spokesman for the school board on Monday. Quote, "I'm a producer at Sun News. I understand that there is a policy in place with the Essex County District School Board that will exempt certain students from participating in Remembrance Day activities. Would you be able to answer the following questions? #1, is this a new policy? If not, when did it start? #2, is this policy in response to complaints from parents? #3, is this policy aimed at any specific group? 4, what was the intent of including the article on the Muslim in Canadian Forces? Many thanks." So the school board spokesman named Scott Scantlebury wrote right back saying, quote, "Any such exemption would be granted in consideration of our religious accommodations procedure. A parent or guardian may request an exemption in the case of Remembrance Day. There may be exemptions granted, though I understand it is not that common. When it has happened, it's usually requested by members of faiths in which pacifism is a tenet. I'm not sure which article you're referring to. However, it is our goal to celebrate diversity whenever we can." Okay, so Scantlebury confirmed it was based on a religious objection, but he said he wasn't sure what our producer was talking about when she mentioned Islam, so we sent him another email clarifying. In fact, we sent him the entire memo that we had leaked to us, everything we had for him to look at. Here's our letter to him. This is the email I'm referring to. Was this policy in response to complaints from parents? Is the policy aimed at a specific group? I'm also wondering why the last 2 links at the bottom were included. Many thanks for your help. The last 2 links at the bottom were links to those Muslim-oriented websites. Scantlebury wrote back again, confirming again the exemptions were for religious reasons, and I quote, "The procedure for religious accommodations has been in place for some time, and no, it was not in response to any concerns from any particular people or groups. It's a necessary document to allow the board to manage any requests for accommodations based on religion or beliefs. The particular link merely is an example and a reminder of the diversity that exists in our country's armed forces." Okay, so there you have it. Confirmation that the memo we got leaked to us was real. Answering twice that it was a policy about religious accommodation. And as to our question about the links to Muslim website, an answer about religious diversity. So we did the show, and we ran the editorial, and we launched a petition to tell the school board to require all students to attend Remembrance Day, regardless of their religion. Well, yesterday, Aaron Kelly, the Director of Education for the school board, sent out a press release saying that we got it all wrong. Let me quote her. "It is incredibly disappointing that an unfortunate misunderstanding has detracted from the solemn observance of Remembrance Day." Well, what did we misunderstand? I mean, I got it wrong. They said the policy wasn't about religious exemptions. They said it was, quote, "In light of the tragic events in Ottawa and Quebec, we had received some expressions of concern regarding safety for students scheduled to attend public Remembrance Day activities at municipal memorials." But the memo didn't mention safety or security at all. Neither did Scott Scantlebury's email exchanges with us. This was all new. It wasn't about religious groups objecting, they now said. It was about safety, they now said. And the school board released another version of the memo that had additional footnotes on it linking to pictures of Aboriginal and African Canadian soldiers, not just Muslim soldiers, that was in the version we received and ran by them. Now, the local CBC took this new press release and ran with it. And then the strangest thing happened. The media party all arose all at once and just went into full Sun News derangement syndrome. It was amazing. It was like watching a flock of geese take flight in perfect formation, all synchronized. Chris Selly at the National Post wrote, "Had Levant asked the school board what was up, we suspect it would have told him what it told CBC. Some parents had expressed concerns that their precious angels wouldn't be safe at the cenotaph in Windsor after what happened last month in Ottawa, so it suggested alternative in-school programming." But of course we did check with the school board and went with what they told us. But it wasn't long before the other birds in the media party flock all started squawking the same thing. None of them checking for themselves, of course. The old media party gang got together in a matter of minutes, each echoing the other's spin, not doing any actual research themselves, all making me the story instead of the story that I had reported. Here's my old friend Andrew Coyne on Twitter. "God damn, Ezra, even for you, this is appalling." And then he linked to the CBC story and wrote, "The real story." Stephen Marr of the Ottawa Citizen was retweeting this stuff, and Chantal Hébert of the Star and Le Devoir. In fairness, one of Hébert's colleagues at the Star, Edward Keenan, actually did have the professionalism to contact me before writing his story. And then Simon Haupt, the Globe and Mail's media reporter. Here's what he wrote online. Check out the headline. "Ezra Levant wrongly accuses Ontario School Board of allowing exemptions for Muslim students on Remembrance Day." Again, note two things here. The story and the headline for this media reporter isn't what a large public institution did, outlined in a written policy and confirmed twice in an email. The news wasn't the story. My reporting on the news was the story to these guys. They're obsessed with us at the Sun. By the time the afternoon rolled around, though, the school board itself was admitting they screwed up their communications to us. The superintendent of the school board, Sharon Pike, actually came on the Sun News Network and talked to Jerry Agar about it. She threw Scantlebury under the bus, frankly, made him the scapegoat. Here, watch for yourself.
One of our producers at Sun News actually sent a note to your school board and received a response by email from Scott Scantlebury that read, "An exemption, any such exemption would be granted in consideration of our religious accommodations procedure. A parent guardian may request an exemption which would have to be approved after consideration by the principal." So you can see where we and he would have thought, well, this is a religious thing.
And it was not. This is all to do with safety. That was the purpose of my memo.
We were given bad information then by one of your information people.
It sounds like that whatever question was asked of Mr. Scantlebury was answered, but it's not in conjunction to what this memo states.
Well, it was the memo that we showed him and asked what this is about, and he said it was in consideration of our religious accommodations procedure. Now you're saying it was not, and Mr. Scantlebury was wrong.
At this point, whatever question was asked of him, he answered the question, but I can tell you that this memo was truly about safety.
We had a look at the memo, some of the producers here, and Ezra did at Sun News. Then we asked a question about it, and we were told that exemptions would be granted in consideration of our religious accommodations procedure. And that was, well, that seemed wrong and seemed confusing, but of course we had to take the word of a person in your organization that sent that to us.
And I'm sorry for the miscommunication. It certainly was not our intent at all. It was to provide information to our principals so they could make the ceremony, their ceremony, the best it can be.
So that's a messy, muddy story now. The spokesman said one thing to us in email. The superintendent said another thing to Jerry, and she actually apologized for the miscommunication. I'm not sure what more we could have done at the Sun. We showed Scantlebury everything we had. We asked him about the Muslim connection, and he said it was a religious exemption issue. One of the two versions of the memo that the school board later released had other ethnic groups mentioned in it too, not just Islam. Perhaps that would have changed our story if we had seen that earlier, but we didn't. And the board didn't tell us that when we showed them our memo. And they didn't mention anything about safety or security ever to us. So the whole thing's a mess. And the school board, which started the day by blaming me, ended the day by apologizing for their miscommunication. I'm not sure what the truth of the story is, frankly, whether it's Pike's version or Scantlebury's version. Either the Remembrance Day exemption policy was for safety, or it was for religious objections. Let's go with the superintendent's version, that they miscommunicated and that she's sorry about.
We had to take the word of a person in your organization that sent that to us.
And I'm sorry for the miscommunication. It certainly was not our intent at all.
We asked them about the memo and about the Muslim exemption. We specifically asked about the Muslim link. And they said it was a religious accommodation policy. In the end, according to a report in the Toronto Star today, no students, Muslim or of any other religion, took the school board up on their exemptions policy. And I'm glad to hear it. I'm still not sure if the school board has a religious exemption policy. The spokesman told us that they do. Perhaps the bureaucrats in the school board are less patriotic than the students in the school board. I sure hope that's true. To me, the main story was the story. We did our best to report it accurately, checking the memo and the Muslim reference in particular with the school board. In the end, they said they misunderstood our written questions and gave us written answers that they later changed. But not before the media party danced with glee about all this. So what did we get right and what did we get wrong? We got right the existence of the memo, allowing students to opt out. We got right that the memo specifically mentioned Islam, but we didn't get it right that other religions were mentioned too in the official school board version of the memo. We got right that this policy is controversial and that many Canadians find the prospect of students opting out of Remembrance Day unpatriotic. But if today's report in the Toronto Star is correct, we got wrong, as did the school board, that students would want to take the school board up on their exemptions policy. I've shown you my work, how we did our due diligence on the story, and what the school board confirmed to us. Based on those facts, I swung for the bleachers, as I always do. I railed against the school board, and also against any students, especially new Canadians, who would use the policy to skip Remembrance Day. I was wrong about that, because none did use it. I'm not going to stop reporting on tough stories, especially those where Islam and Canada touch, especially on the symbols of our sovereignty and questions about the separation of mosque and state. Frankly, with all the information I have today, I'm still concerned that the school board may allow religious opt-outs for Remembrance Day. But I'm glad my fears were not realized and that students didn't use that opt-out. I'll keep checking my facts, as we did in this story. When we get things right, we'll tell you. And when we get things wrong, you can count on us to tell you that too. On this one, we got the policy right. But luckily, we got our predictions about the students wrong.